Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. So today we're going to be working on Project 1, Step 6, reviewing all the information that was given to me and that I wrote and what errors need to be adjusted and sending it to the teacher and moving forward with more assignments and more reading, not just stop. Let's get started. Let y'all see what I see. Can you see what I see? Can you hear what I hear? The first project says, describe 3 ways in which meat org future will be different from how meat org is today. The directors will take more ownership and really direct instead of not meeting quality standards. If they take more ownership for better direction of not only the team but the groups, it will mean more retention and less turnover rates, or positive retention. No, voluntary and less turnover rates. There must be an adjustment between the directors searching for new information towards a better understanding for the group and or team. If they research a new item out on the market or service out there on the market, they can help collaborate more assets by figuring out a plan for how they would legally solicit an item or sell it. They would then train the employees on how to sell the item. How would they differ? This would help put some direction into the company's margin. If we do not keep above standards, then you risk liquidation of assets or bankruptcy of a company. It gets old, it loses value. It gets old and loses value because me or didn't keep up with the proper trends. It falls behind. And only a selected few reap the benefits, especially with the Leap app services. In the future, there will be a responsibilities for one's actions on all levels because there will be an advisor to every corporate company wanting to gain knowledge on what it takes to be different from another. It takes being beyond the trends and reaching out towards the sky. New York has a lot of complaints, and they are crippling when 40% of whites leave, comma, and 23% of Hispanics leave, and lastly, 20% of blacks leave. Our second phase of the future, take classes on innovative and um, transformational leadership to see how to keep innovating employees to use cross-functional ways, uh, team team ways where they bring in everyone from production, sales, marketing, finance, and legal. They do not have a managerial position, and that is their weakness. Everyone is directing and giving their expertise. Meet or needs a production team for the future, and this way, every employee, all angles. Third, participate in temporary decision making processes. Wait, meet or needs a production team, which production teams entails cross-functional teams. They work from different departments to get the job done, and they disband. Um, Production teams, they get together. They can from all angles, all departments, and they complete the task. But something is different. I forgot what it was. Both are the same. They get cross functional. They get specific teams together. A group um, is one with similar interests. A group is one with similar interests in a group together. A team is when you come from different angles to produce the same results quicker time. It could be from one sector of a production cross-functional team, and it could be from a production team that is from all departments. So you can get a variety of personalities and stuff. They're not a group. They don't know each other. They don't have similar interests. They're from different departments. The third fundamental future change is that there will be a system of accountability and zero tolerance for emotional firing or involuntary turnover for illegal. This means if an employee has a problem and has stated the problem numerous amounts of time with no real effort to change the situation, then the leader above must own and claim that their direction failed. No firing, just more corporate intensive classes. Redirection. To recap, more ownership for better direction, new information for better quality of the company, having a product style type teams, product, what? Production. Name three future organizational values and beliefs needed to support the future vision. The org should be very consistent with their traditional values needed for structure. The org have their values through their employees by making sure they adhere to their standards as being managers. They must first analyze directive from corporate and learn how not to only digest but regurgitate dialogue to the direction of the team. In doing this, you must not only analyze but make sure or also make a safe haven to tell employees without emotion about the checklist that teams will explore together. Their values must align with their beliefs. When you align positive values, such as asking a manager about your unknown expressive feelings with HR, your supervisor, it's imperative to use critical thinking and engage in normalized dialogue while staying controlled. Then both parties can have a normalized back and forth conversation with each other rather than a one-way managerial conversation. Second, future organizational values and beliefs that are needed to support the future vision is to seek out what motivational and inspiring tactics that employees can create as a team at Me.org. I feel like Me.org beliefs are simple. What they value versus beliefs are wrong. A lot of people have been complaining about the jobs, and I said that already, but what is my point? Me.org must motivate by keeping their employees engaged and keeping a positive life themselves, respectfully. So you give positivity back towards employees, positive aspirations, and values back towards employees in the world. The managerial system that must be obliged by for a better future must consist of not clicks, but professional, meaningful, thoughtful dialogue that is not only consistent with of motivational features and factors, but encouragement and showing the unknown positives to the employees. Employee diversity comes from all walks of life. We must learn to engage with vulnerabilities and also telling the employee about your expectations. You then once phase then once phase one is complete, tell the employee about the direction of where the company is going and how you like to accomplish it. In phase two, you give them expectations while still navigating the expectations and rules. Phase three, meet org tells the company you need all employees on the same page so that you can better control the environment. Pre-interview them th- thoroughly evaluate, thoroughly have an evaluation of their expectations, pressure. Y'all remember going to the Greyhound bus station? You had to pay a quarter to use the bathroom, so the children would just climb under the daggone stall. Just FYI, just trying to keep people joking and laughing. Anyway, and pressure that would go on while in the workplace. Acknowledge the plan of accuracy might not always fall on the needle. Address any concerns that me or employees might have. Wait, phase two. Where's phase three? Did I say it was three phases? Yeah, it's three phases. Lastly, a third feature organizational values and beliefs that once meet org is adjusted with the post-employment employees will need to keep those creativity and endurance going by evaluations and rebuilding. At rebuilding the trust within the system of meet org, action is essential, ensuring employees that ensuring employees there that managers take their judgment serious if they get evaluated by staff and they may disagree on the directives given or the direction of the company moving in. Positive actions will make it possible to have transference of equal power and control through remaining positive and sharing words, sharing kind words while being transparent with Meet Org's managerial style towards the goals and future of the company. To recap, I've said what I've said, which would be three values and beliefs of the future is to adhere to the standards of a manager um, within Meet Org company. There must be an adjustment between the directors searching for new information towards a better understanding. Okay. Better, Stress is any event that puts a mental or physical demand on your body. Work-related stress, also known as occupational stress, is a related concept that has been of interest to researchers for decades. Malik and Shashabudin define work-related stress as a change in psychological, physical, or behavioral response to a workplace challenges and threats posed to employees. Research on work-related stress typically explores employee responses to negative stress, distress, rather than positive stress, eustress. Malik. The majority of research on work-related stress also suggests that there is an individual response to real or perceived threats, and that this type of stress is counterproductive. When we review these definitions, it becomes clear that work-related stress is a highly individualized concept that depends on each person's assessment of a given situation. Resilience is a concept related to stress that is also highly dependent on the individual. Resilience is the demonstration of positive adaptation in the face of significant adversity. An individual capacity to respond to stressful situations is directly related to how resilient that individual will be. In one section, we will explore the causes and impact of work-related stress and how individuals experiencing negative work-related stress can build their resilience. There is no shortage of research that examines the common causes of work-related stress and its likely consequences for individuals and organizations. Kumar suggests that work-related stress is the result of discrepancy between expectation of the employee and the demands of the employer. Other causes of work-related stress include work overload, job insecurity, insufficient rewards, and relationships with colleagues. Work-related stressors can be acute, chronic, combination, or both. Acute stress is stress experienced by individuals on a day-to-day basis. Chronic stress is long-term exposure to stressful events. I have chronic stress. Work-related stressors, whether acute or chronic, have a significant impact on the individuals and its organizations. Research suggests that the following can result from work-related stress: diseases, depression, heart disease, muscle disease. I mean, if you look at the facts, which is if you sit up there and talk to water, water changes its texture or it changes the bubbles inside of the water versus if you talk positive to water. So the more negative people talk, the more outcome negative for you unless you shut them up. Impact on other facets and individuals' mental, physical health, sleep disturbance, anxiety, loss of concentration, poor decision making, lack of initiative. Organizational outcomes such as decreased productivity, decreased efficiency, and increased employee absenteeism. When it comes to managing employees at work related stress, both the individual and organization play an important part in ensuring that this is done in a positive way. Um, Individuals who manage stress in a positive way, minimizing the negative effect on their health and work performance, are displaying resilience. Typically, when we refer to managing stress in a positive way, we are referring to the coping strategies individuals use to respond to stress. There is no one size fits all approach to how one can build resilience. Since stress is a concept that is uniquely unique to each individual. What resilience looks like for you is different from what it looks like for someone else. There's some general suggestions, however, about how both individuals and organizations can become more resilient. Research suggests that adaptive coping strategies are most useful after exposure to a stressful event. Participating in recreational activities, mediating, using employee assistance strategies, and seeking professional help or social support are examples of adaptive coping. An important step in building resilience is identifying what causes us stress: insecurity, lack of opportunity, work overload, resource constraints, work life imbalance. To stressors that are considered traumatic events, sexual harassment, discrimination, hazardous working conditions. Once the source has been identified, employees need to understand how these stressors make us feel. Self awareness is the key to managing stress. Then employees must respond in a positive way that is appropriate to their needs. In the same vein, employees must identify employee stressors and cultivate strategies to decrease employee stress levels. Organizations have recognized the significant efforts of stress and responded by adopting stress management problems or programs that emphasize adapting coping strategies. An example: Malik and Shahabuddin report that an imbalance of work life occurs when a person is dedicated too much time to their career, so they do not have the energy to support their families with the emotional investment they need. Organization can minimize the stress caused by work related imbalances by allowing employees to telecommute. On the other hand, a lack of resilience will be demonstrated if an individual displays maladaptive coping techniques, detrimental behaviors such as avoidance, overeating, or drug use. Sorry, y'all. That's why I drink my red. Okay, let's see. In addition, if an organization increases an individual workload or refuses to provide a more flexible work schedule, that would be an example of an organization hindering an employee ability to be resilient. I have a big example of somebody trying to, um, but I don't want to say it. But I had a example. Organizational culture is the sum of beliefs, values, and assumptions that represent shared meaning among members of organization, guiding their behavior. It is related to the organization identity, much like an individual's personality. Every organization has a culture. Every organization culture is unique. Here, we examine the meaning of culture in work, organizations, and important features. By understanding the natures and level of culture, we can learn how to maintain it and how to work towards necessary changes. A famous management expert once said, "Our organization is a body of thought, thought by thinking thinkers." This is a word puzzle that is meant to make us think, and it does. After all, one of the most common definitions of a work organization found in many textbooks is that it is a goal directive system of cooperative effort. The standard definition says nothing about thinking. Instead, it focuses on rationale approach to collaborative work, driven by organizational goals that come down from top management. In contrast, body of thought implies that an organization is not something tangible, or rather, it is whatever we think it is. It is cognitive rather than physical in nature. This conceptualization of our organization comes from the ways that it has been thought about over time as it has evolved. Further, this conceptualization comes from thinking thinkers, or the people who have reflected on their work and how it is done most effectively in this organization and who continue to do so. The culture continues to evolve even today as people make sense of what they do together. For example, do we work in offices or with walls and doors or in open cubicles? Which way works best? What meaning does an open cubicle have for us? Accessibility and open communication or lack of trust and little privacy. If our organization has both, who gets offices rather than cubicles, then why is that? Why does that What does that tell us about who and what are valued? Our answers to these questions are not apparent in our standard definition of organizations, but they tell us a great deal about the organization and as it's perceived by its members. These answers will be unique in every organization. The physical cubicles may look the same, but can mean very different things in different organizations. From the perspective of organizational culture, many aspects of organization are symbols that have meaning for the members of the organization. The organization itself is subjective in nature, defined by the group and people in it. The organization itself is subjective in nature, defined by a group of people in it. In some, culture can be seen as beliefs, values, and assumptions that represent shared meaning among members of an organization and that guide their behavior. You can't get in. It becomes part of the identity of an organization, much like an individual's personality. An individual organizational culture can lead to better organizational effectiveness and performance, customer satisfaction, and sales and for profit. For a deeper understanding of culture and how it emerges in a group or organization, we can consider the following explanation of an organizational um, culture. Organizational culture is the pattern of basic assumptions that are given to a group who has invented, discovered, or developed in learning to cope with its problems of external adaptation and internal integration, and that have worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to these problems. From this, we learn the assumptions inherent in culture, emerge in problem solving, and that this process is not only about how best to coordinate the activities internally, internal integration, but also about how best to adapt to the organizational externals environment. The approach that work well are adopted and then taken for granted as a corrected way to solve these problems in this organization. Sorry, hold on. Excuse me for a second. Trying to make sure the approaches that will work well are adopted and then taken for granted as the correct way to solve these problems in this organization. For example, people learn that teamwork is more effective than solo endeavors all the time. Then this will become a taking for granted practice in this organization or an assumption. If people learn that teamwork is more effective than solo endeavors all the time, then this will become taken for granted. Okay, members will be expected to work together effectively in teams to get things done. In another organization, there will be no willingness and regular practice to work on teams. If they learn from their own past experiences that teams were not effective for their problems. Often culture develops early on when an organization forms. In this case, the founders and early leaders of an organization have great influence on how problems are solved and what is valued. If an organization stays relatively small and is privately owned, this is likely to continue. In larger organizations, this becomes more complex as subcultures develop and top executives come and go. Each leader will influence culture by example through actions and policy changes. However, the original culture itself at the level of unstated assumptions, has great momentum to persist and changes slowly, if at all, unless deliberately and dramatic actions are taken to hasten and desire new sets of values. Values and norms for behavior grow out of the group's problem solving success and failures. This is a key reason why desire culture change imposed by top management is not an easy process and may take a long time. The roots of organizational culture rest in how people in groups develop their own unique social reality. In the 1950s, social psychologist Solomon Asch performed an experiment that reviewed how a member of a group would choose to incorrectly misstate the length of a line after six others before, unbeknownst to him working for the researcher, had knowingly misstated its length. 40% of the time, the error would occur. However, when no one else was present to speak beforehand, stating an incorrect length, individual research participants were incorrect only 1% of the time. This experiment became famous because it revealed the powerful impact of social pressure for someone to conform to a group. The culture in this organization has a control effect on its members, and is a way that the group ensures compliance with the values. Function of a culture. Organizational culture emerge from a group's shared understanding of reality. It binds them together, creating a shared identity. This common identity provides clarity and in some cases help people stay motivated and work towards common goals. It overrides self interest and guides their behaviors in specific ways. As you might imagine, however, a culture where there are unfettered political conflicts, coercive practices, and so forth can lead members into engaging with such behaviors and may not be demotivating rather than motivating. Each culture will call for a different approach based on what is valued by that culture and its unwritten rules. For example, of how culture works and can be seen on the issue of workplace civility. Nearly two-thirds of people now experience rudeness at work. This presents costs for the organizations in the form of lower productivity, increased stress, higher turnover, more absenteeism, among other measures. Actions for fostering more civil culture include rewarding civil behavior, culture managers and employees, holding people at all levels accountable for their behavior, and modeling civil behavior yourself. As people learn that civility helps them solve problems more readily and be more effective in their work, it can hold and become a core value in their culture. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what it's called. I just call it positive behavior, like I said in my paper. Since culture is made up of shared meanings taken for granted and held among group members, it is not readily discernible, especially if you're an outsider to a new organization. Like personality, it can only be known by engaging with the person and learning more. If you want to fit into an organization as a newcomer or seek to change this culture as a manager, being able to diagnose the current culture is vital. Let me take my allergy medicine. Excuse me. Hold on, you guys. Taking a little quick break. Since culture is made up of shared meanings taken for granted and held among group members, it is not readily discernible, especially if you're an outsider to a new organization. Like personality, it can be only known by engaging with the other person and learning more. If you want to fit into an organization as a newcomer or seek to change its culture as a manager, being able to diagnose the current culture is vital. Culture exists in all at three levels. Top level artifacts, the physical and social environment of the organization. This includes elements such as the formal organizational structure, jargon, stories people tell, rituals such as annual budgeting cycles, holiday parties, etc., clothing, uniforms, symbols, logo, flags, the physical workforce, place features, long-standing traditions such as civil service rankings. This top level stays easy to middle. Value and beliefs. The preference that members espouse what they say, believe in, and how things should be done. Middle level provides more insight on culture based on what members say is important in this organization. By asking, we can begin to understand the official reasons why they do the things that they do, work on teams rather than solo. However, what people say is important is not always what truly is important to them. Just imagine five people and they split the work equally, right? Imagine that. Now, imagine now five people that split the work plus do more, exceed the expectations, do the work plus 75% work, more work in the future. Those are the people that Facebook are looking for. Mm. At this level, we can begin to understand the assumptions that truly drive day to day behaviors, while certain choices have been made and continue to be made. At this level, the unconscious assumptions may or may not match up to the stated value at the mid level. These assumptions about how the organization does things are so ingrained and subconscious that they're not easy to identify. Only with in-depth questioning of members in a variety of roles throughout the hierarchy and many observation of behaviors we can begin to understand the culture at this level. For example, we may discover that everyone works on teams because in this organization they don't trust one another to do a good job when working alone. However, this may not have been the reason that was given when they were first asked in the middle level. Identifying culture. Identifying the culture in a group or organization is a process of carefully or observation and speaking with the members of the organization at all levels. Here are just some of the questions you might pursue to gain insight on the culture. How do its members describe the organization? Do they use any particular metaphor or image? What is the physical impression and feeling that you have walking around the organization? What are the do's and the don'ts? What are the official espoused values match the ones that seem to be in use? What jargon or buzzwords tend to be used a lot, and what is their meaning? What are the stories that are told to newcomers about the organization in the past and its people, such as its good or bad leaders or troublesome employees? What do executives focus on their communications? What do executives focus on in their communications? How is performance measured, and who, individuals and groups, is rewarded most and most often? How do managers react when there is perceived crisis? How do people treat one another with respect and civility? How much professional development and coaching is done? Who gets excluded from important meetings and rewards? Who is listened to? Large organizations have many subcultures because different groups within the organization have evolved and learned what works for them over time. In fact, there may be greater variation in subcultures of a large organization, that there are differences between the culture of the large organization and another organization. This means that understanding the culture in a large organization requires a lot of investigation of the different subcultures, since they are quite likely quite different from another, even though there will be influence to some extent by the larger culture. Subcultures often emerge from specific work groups. For example, informational technology group may develop norms that cause um, informality. They may have a flat structure, dress casually, work odd hours in solitude, and work well into the night to solve a problem. In contrast, human resource group might have strict norms about following policy at all costs due to the legal implications of their work. They may dress formally and work 8 to 5, have a clear, rigid chain of command, and have an open door attitude for any employee to come in with a problem. This is not to say that all IT and HR groups will have the same characteristics. While there may be some similarities, it depends on a group culture that has evolved in the specific organization. What just happened? Culture is maintained over time. If it values and the norms continue to help the group solve its problems, there is a risk of obsolescence for a culture, especially if the external environment of a group or organization is dynamic, undergoing rapid change, and its uncertainty and unpredictability. For example, if an organization culture does not value culture or client input, but an aggressive competitor initiates a service that does a great job of meeting the client needs and is able to listen to the clients continuously to adapt to its services, the organization closed to input may find itself as at a disadvantage with outdated culture. An obsolescent culture may be maintained for some time before declining performance effects are traced back to the culture and changes are made. Sometimes new management helps illuminate the need for change and try new ways of doing things. The selection of new employees is an example of how current values are maintained in a culture. And homogeneity is value over diversity. New hires will mirror existing staff. They will have the same values, similar cultural and educational backgrounds, and be similar in terms of racial, ethnic, gender identities. It is common for people to unconsciously as well as intentionally hire those like themselves. A key reason why members of minority groups and women frequently face difficulty being hired into prestigious roles and rising in the hierarchy of many organizations. While I didn't put this shit, but it's true. If diversity is valued by the organization, however, this culture value will encourage hiring people from different backgrounds with diverse characteristics, skill sets, and perspectives. Culture is also maintained as new employees are socialized into an organization. Consider the example of how new military recruits on a rigorous progress or process of basic training. A formal new employee orientation is one way of that this onboarding process is done in other organizations. Also consider what new messages new staff members will say will receive about the culture when it's no formal introduction and they are simply given a difficult task and a deadline. Are they learning merely what that they have independence and problem solving, or are they learning that the management of the organization is uncaring and does not value the support of others? New employees may not know at first which interpretation is most accurate, but they will learn as time passes through observation and conversation with coworkers. I read this already. Those are the factors, their policies. I have to talk to him first. Hold on. Just in case the third step. Realistic and attainable visions with one factor. One factor. I'd rather do external factors. I need to write the teacher anyway and tell him that the people I had a group with prior to this, that I don't want to be in that same group. Step two. Um, Fiddlesticks. Questions regarding I can't do anything else. I'm gonna wait on my teacher. So I got this whole weekend. I know where to get the information from. Okay, you guys. So to recap, what I did was I read all of step 6. I read step 7. I had to stop. They requested and they told me to consult with my teacher. I sent him a message. We already discussed how his rules are. And so I'm going to wait exactly till Friday, and I'm pretty sure he'll get back through earlier prior to Friday. And that's it. There's no punchline. There's no extra quote. There's no however, but because, it's just simple. I have faith that he'll contact me back. Um, Today was a hectic day, but I'll get back on here and I'll talk about that after hours. Tonight, what I'll do is I'll do politics after hours. And so that's what we'll do tonight. I'll uh, do something where I'm doing politics after hours. So I hope that you all enjoy this hour and 40-minute film. Did y'all? Did y'all? Did you enjoy? Take care, be safe, and I will see you guys in a bit. What is this? Oh, I'm so scared in my boots. I'm so scared in my boots. Anyway, so take care, be safe, and I will see you guys later. Bye.